It says preparing. Okay. Peace and power, everyone. Welcome into the gathering. It's your brother, Professor Ware. You might remember me from such greats as the Stein campaign, running with Dr. Jill in 2024, and finishing third, running for governor in the state of California with the aim of finishing first to smashing the duopoly here in my home state, because we are in a moment of political crisis and deepest need. Our communities are suffering. Our communities are suffering here in the state of California as ICE invades this state, uh, as people go hungry in the wealthiest state in the union because of our poor resource distribution and our unjust political system governed by a corrupt duopoly that is in the pockets of corporate interests. So we are going to unpack all of that this evening. We're going to move together in love and solidarity, and be instruments of change together. Um, I'm going to just say a few words to introduce us. The first thing is I want to introduce everybody to Jason Call, my campaign manager. You might also remember him from such greats as the Steinware campaign. We had so much fun doing it the first time that I invited Jason aboard as our campaign manager. You're going to hear plenty from Jason in a minute. He's going to serve as the MC for this evening and also the chair when we move to the panelist portion of the programming. But I first wanted to introduce our first speakers, Fernando de Veras and Leslie Priscilla, because they have to leave a little bit early. So they're going to be a standalone presentation. And then we will have our panelists, Susan Abulhawa, Rathbone, and Greg Stoker, share together. And then lastly, Dr. Jill will speak, and then I'll close the evening out. So to introduce quickly, Leslie and Fernando. You might know Leslie from her wonderful social media feed, Latinx Parenting. Leslie Priscilla is a mother to three children, first-generation daughter of immigrants with indigenous and Aramuri lineage, the founder of Latinx Parenting, a grassroots organization dedicated to ending cycles of violence and healing colonial trauma that have been passed down from generation to generation. Her page on IG has over 200,000 followers, and it highlights the intersectionalities of liberation movements across cultures, from Mexico to Palestine. It's a true power couple, because this is like a team. Fernando de Veras is a Mexican-American son of immigrants, father to a 10-year-old son, certified educator and community organizer. His page on IG at Fernando de Veras is dedicated to providing political education and cultural conversation in a way that is accessible and action-oriented, tackling issues from the local to the international level. And you are looking at the kernel of what will be our ground team in Santa Ana as well. So they're joining us straight from the OC. So please welcome Leslie and Priscilla to open the proceedings this evening.
Yeah, thank you for having us, Butch, and thank you to everybody here for joining us. I just wanted to highlight, we were with, I actually got to meet Butch and a few others on this call last year in Santa Barbara when you called that conference and had us all come down there. So I just wanted to say thank you to create these spaces where we can all come together and start building this community across the country. So again, a little bit about myself. Oh, and we got our cat popping in here. Hello. A little bit about myself. We are here from the city of Santana, Orange County. It is the city with the highest population of Latinos in the county. And if you know anything about Orange County, it's often known as the Florida of California. It's a historically red district, but we have seeds of progressivism in this city and in this county. I remember in 2020, I was heavy on the Bernie Sanders campaign where we were not. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I was heavy on the Bernie Sanders campaign in 2016 and 2020, where we flipped Orange County for Bernie. In 2020, that same year, we also had a surge of progressive candidates that ran for city council here in Santa Ana on platforms like rent control, which we passed. We have the lowest rent control, I believe, in the state of California at 3%. And we ran on policies like police accountability, affordable housing, investment in youth programs. And so Santa Ana for us is a sort of stomping ground for a lot of the progressive policies that we want to see spreading throughout the country. I want to give some platform on behalf of International Women's Day to my lady Leslie Priscilla to share about her page, because her work is really central to breaking down a lot of the narratives that we have, our people have been indoctrinated into.
Yeah, thank you. And I apologize in advance for my hoarse voice. I've been without a voice for a few days and it's finally coming back. My work started years ago. I am the child of Mexican immigrants, and I really understand the way that, them not having the resources that they needed impacted their parenting and their ability to really show up for their children. And so my work is around supporting parents in recognizing what their own needs are, validating their children's needs, and reconnecting with our own values of collectivism and unity, right? And so my work is really a reminder of our strength. It's a reminder of our power as Latinos, as Latinx people, and of the beauty and celebration that can exist in these movements. So I really appreciate the invitation. This is really amazing. I follow, I think, all of you here. And so I'm very inspired by the work that everybody here is doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wanted to just give some room, Butch, if there's anything in particular that you want us to speak on. Again, I feel like there's a lot of different angles that we could take this conversation here.
Yeah, so the question that I wanted to call you guys in on specifically is how do you see our needs in terms of building a structure and an organization on the ground in Santa Ana, in Orange County, and throughout the state that can actually win? Because one of the problems that we face in, the so-called leftist organizing space is that we lack, robust, strong ground games and connections with communities. So I wanted you to kind of give us some perspective on how we can actually build this thing to win. It's going to be the principal focus of my closing comments this evening, because as far as I'm concerned, the situation is so urgent for our communities that we cannot be just on the field to be playing. We have to be running these campaigns to take power. And then we have to move beyond the phase where we are just mobilizing around issues, whether it is, ending the genocide, whether it's ending police brutality or ending ICE raids. And we need to be organizing for collective power. And that starts on the ground in communities. And you guys are both organizers, connected and in state. So I wanted your thoughts and reflections upon that.
Okay. Yeah, so I think one of the first areas I would highlight is there's a lot of apathy, right, among voters, among the electorate. Someone can maybe drop it in the chat. What percentage of people didn't even show up to vote last year? Because they see that there's this two-party duopoly. They see that conservatives, Republicans, Democrats, liberals aren't really invested in looking out for the issues that matter most to them. And what I see here on the ground is that if you are able to just make that connection with somebody, ask them, what are the issues that matter to you? And show them that there is an option, there is an alternative to whatever is being presented in the mainstream, and say, this is someone that you can actually count on to fight for those issues that matter to you. People want that. People are hungry for that. And again, in 2020, that's what we saw. We had a surge of young people, progressive-minded people, that saw that there was this massive movement around the country, around Black Lives Matter, around police accountability. And here we had people that were willing to speak up and say, yeah, we do need to take some funds that are going into the police department's pockets and send it back to our communities. And those people won, not just in 2020, but they won re-elections in 2022. And they even went against recalls when we had a corrupt police officers association here in the city that was trying to take out some of our local representatives because they were getting in the way of them fattening up their contracts. We had to go up, mobilize, organize to shut that down. I think that what we've seen here in Santa Ana is, again, a template of what we can create in other cities around the country. And if we're focusing here in California, especially, right, there's plenty of progressive energy in California if we have people on the ground that are willing to bring people out and let them know that there is an option for you.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would really add to that is that what I'm finding just in the conversations here locally is that unfortunately there's a lot of inability to kind of resolve the interpersonal. And so that is something that I kind of want to amplify and highlight, is that a lot of us are operating out of deep wounds that we have either within our own, ethnic culture, within our own cities. And so, my work and kind of the way that I bridge into the work that Fernando is doing with his kind of organizing is to kind of amplify the fact that we need to heal, right? We need a lot of long-term commitment to healing. And I really think that the community is ready for that. I also just want to kind of encourage everybody that's listening to, not think that that's like something complicated that we have to do, but we have to start looking at ourselves and the ways that we're either, I would say, perpetuating colonial behaviors with one another, or uplifting each other, right? And kind of operating from a more collectivist, more empathetic, more understanding, but still resisting the systemic oppression and still resisting the bigger fight. So yeah, I think that's all I would add to that.
Mhm.
It's an incredibly powerful intervention, and thank you for it. The morning community education class that I taught is, programming specifically for the Muslim community or the Muslim adjacent community as well. That is literally about how we draw on the resources of the tradition to heal from these kind of traumas, sharpen ourselves as instruments of collective liberation through like actually doing that inner work. And I've said on any number of occasions that tapping into our ancestral, traditions has been a key piece that has been missing from a lot of our movement work, because as long as we are damaged and compromised instruments as human beings, then we are going to reproduce all kinds of, imperialism, all kinds of white supremacy, all kinds of misogyny in the way that we move in our collective spaces. So that's a really, powerful word for you to bring into the conversation. I just wanted to, because I know you guys have to go, and I really appreciate you guys making a small window of time before we move to our panel. What kind of counsel would you give us as a campaign? Myself as a candidate, Jason as a CM, the amazing, group of interlocutors, surrogates, people that are going to be building this campaign and drawing in, funding and volunteers, nationwide, but having to apply, those resources here in California. Any kind of final word of counsel to give to us, or an opening word of counsel as we get ready to take on, the next 15, 16 months of building into the primary of June 2026.
Mhm. Yeah, first off, I wish we could stick around longer. I really want to hear what folks on this call have to say. There's a lot of wisdom in this collective space here. I think something I would suggest to really emphasize is being mindful of the kind of language and the narrative that we are bringing into these spaces. Because I know from having worked in the progressive space, in the leftist space, in the organizing space, there's oftentimes this tendency to assume that people know what we know, assume that people should be ready to accept certain narratives as reality, not considering, again, what Leslie's work really is focused on is breaking down some of those narratives and really helping people to peel back the layers of how did we get to where we are today, helping people to walk that road and figure out what are the power structures at play that are creating the conditions that we are living under, and speaking in a language that is plain and simple. I remember I spoke with Claudia last year, Claudia de la Cruz, and that was something else that she shared that was really helpful in her campaign, was just speaking people in a language that they understand, getting to know what are those issues that are core to their reality. And so really just making time to get to know people where they are.
Yeah, I would just emphasize the importance of ensuring that this movement is intergenerational, right? We have elders that have so much wisdom and so much ability to kind of show up right in the ways that we want them and need them to. And then we also have so much youth. Like I think especially here in Santana where we are, we're really seeing the youth rise up. And I think as their elders, we have to allow them to kind of take up that space and to organize. And so whenever we do events, we're inviting people, but we're inviting them to bring their parents, we're inviting them to bring their children, we're inviting the entire community. And so it has to be an intergenerational, intercultural movement. And I think that you're already doing that, and I celebrate that. But I just wanted to emphasize it.
Beautiful. And I know you guys have to run, but you gave me two closing Malcolm quotes to put a bow on what you guys brought in there. For you, Fernando, Malcolm said, "Do not be in a hurry to condemn. There was a time when you did not know what you know today," right? That too often we are impatient. And if we are not only unwilling to seek converts, but unwilling to accept them when they just show up, then where will we be left? A good dose of patience is a crucial part of all of those traditions. And Leslie reminding me of, with the intergenerational aspect. It swells our numbers. And Malcolm said, we are not outnumbered, we are out organized. If we actually marshal the human resources that are already present in our communities, then we can do the damn thing. So thank you guys so much. And I'm gonna out them just briefly. This is the night in the week that they've got childcare coverage, so that we are gonna let them go and have a great time on a date and enjoy their evening. Really appreciate your energy, the great love and affection that you guys obviously have for each other, for your communities, for our communities, and for this movement. And thank you for dropping in. With that, we'll give you guys a round of applause. And I am going to take off the MC hat. I'm going to hand that over to Jason Call, our campaign manager, to introduce our upcoming panel.
Thanks, Butch, and thanks so much, Leslie and Fernando, for being here. My name is Jason Call. I am the campaign manager. Honored to be in the campaign management position with Butch after our run for the presidential campaign with Jill Stein. And I want to offer first a land acknowledgement. I come to you from the lands of the Coast Salish people here in a little bit north of Seattle, in the Pacific Northwest. But when we give a land acknowledgement, so a lot of times it's a performative thing. We've all been in spaces where it's something that was said but is not really honored the way it should be. And as I give the land acknowledgement about stewardship of this land from time immemorial here on Turtle Island, I want people watching this to know that we are serious about this. We are serious about collective liberation. And one of the things that really drove this home to me, I want to talk about my friend Millie Kennedy, who is Tsimshian Indian, lives here in the Seattle area, and I've organized with her for 10, 15 years now. And at a fundraising event for Jill, we had asked Millie to give a land acknowledgement, and she said to me, I don't need to give a land acknowledgement. I know this is my land. What I need is my land back. So what she said, and she said, a land acknowledgement is often for white people to make them feel good about the fact that they are living on stolen land. And what she did is she brought a young Palestinian organizer into our space, and she said, where we need to be right now is recognizing the Palestinian people need their land back. So in the spirit of solidarity with the atrocities that have been committed on the Palestinian people for the last 16 months, we not only say land back for the original inhabitants here in Turtle Island, we say land back for the people of Palestine. It is occupied territory, and we will fight to that until that goal is achieved. So having said that, we have some wonderful panelists today. We're going to bring to you Palestinian American author Susan Abu Hawa, media personality Rathbone, and anti-war veteran and also media personality Greg Stoker. We're going to have these panelists are going to speak for a few minutes, then we're going to have some dialogue. There is a Q&A for people who want to ask some particular questions. When I'm done talking here, I will try and get to answering the Q&A, but that's where you should be directing your questions if you want something specific answered. And then later on in the evening, we're going to bring on Dr. Jill Stein, Butch's running mate for the 2024 election, and we will talk with her. And we're going to keep this upbeat. And the last thing I want to say before I stop talking is this is a fundraiser. We have a team working day and night, putting graphics together, putting this event on, making sure that we get events scheduled around the state of California. Everything everything that goes into a campaign is labor. And while we also do this for the love of the cause, because we have to fight for the future, we want to make sure that we are raising the money so that we can run a strong campaign in the state of California against the duopoly and for the collective liberation of all people. So please, the donation link will be dropped into the chat. Please kick in as much as you feel like you are able to. We're not asking anybody to break their own bank, but campaigns take money. They don't run on good feelings. So on that note, I am going to introduce somebody who I was honored to get to know over the course of the campaign, and I've watched his work for a couple of years now, and it's always fantastic and always on point. I'm going to introduce Rathbone. Rathbone, the floor is yours.
Hey, thank you, Jason. And thank you all for having me. I have a tremendous amount of respect for everyone here. It's so refreshing to actually hear the actual left, whenever Trump says he calls out the radical left lunatics, I always feel like a child left behind, because the radical left lunatics aren't, the Biden administration. It's not the Democrats. But anyway, I did prepare a few remarks, so I'll just go ahead and I actually prepared this time. But I am very excited about Dr. Butch Ware's campaign for governor, as I am very excited about the Green Party in general. I first heard Dr. Butch speak alongside Dr. Jill Stein when they were running for president last year, and they were interviewed by Mehdi Hassan, who gave a very pointed and, in my opinion, unfair representation of the Green Party last year. And I just noticed that Dr. Stein and Dr. Ware handled it so very well, and were sharing all the same ideas so eloquently that I try to amplify and share in my own content. And it was just really inspiring for me to hear political candidates to talk this way, because we just don't hear this ever. And I believe the working class, the general public, who are not allied with mega transnational corporations, we not only need economic power, material power over the economy, but and organization in that sector, but we also need strong political parties to spearhead these movements. And I feel like I found that in the Green Party and Dr. Ware and Dr. Stein as well. And so in the last election, as Jason was saying, I got to really I got to know the Green Party very well. I mean, better than I did, and they really taught me the importance of campaigning and amplifying the true message of the actual left, which has been sidelined from mainstream media. And I got to know how really hard it is to run a campaign against the corporate duopoly, which confers all the benefits of having billions of dollars backing both of these parties, the Democrats and the Republicans. And, Jason recounted, sorry, that was a sound alert. Jason was telling me just all the escapades he had to go through just to get on the ballot in all these states, and just how both parties really, but the Democrats in particular, make it so very hard for the Green Party to flourish, and just even get their message across. So I noticed when I would make these videos endorsing the Green Party, most of the comments I received were very positive, but of the comments that were critical, they seemed to harp on this theme of like how the Green Party isn't visible enough, or they disappear after every election. There's this myth, about the Green Party. And to me, it's painfully obvious that just because you don't hear about it doesn't mean nothing's happening. The Green Party faces a national media blackout every time they campaign. I mean, Green Party candidates are going up against Goliath. So I don't know. I just empathize and I identify with that struggle. Even microcosmically with my own platforms, I feel like I'm constantly having to overcome shadow banning and all these things. So I don't get why critics don't factor in that 90% of everything we see, hear, or read is owned and propagated by 5 corporations. But I do believe that these things are changing, and I'm here to, you know, accelerate this class awareness in our society and give it a push, give history a push in the right direction. To me, it seems very clear that Trump won't be stopped by making signs on little paddles or wearing pink or any other form of aesthetic coping. The Democratic Party is not the resistance to fascism, it is the assistance to fascism. And fascist right-wing parties love ineffectual and impotent so-called liberal opposition parties that they can steamroll over. And I think that we're seeing that firsthand right now. And I just hope more people see it for what it is. You know, I forgive me, it was a little hard of hearing, but I didn't catch their names. But the two speakers that just left, they really touched on a really great point, which was to, you know, meet people where they are, you know, have patience, because you didn't know things at one point as well. And a lot of these things are really simple, and we just need to be effective. I mean, in my own scope, I want to be an effective communicator of these very simple things. It's not hard to understand. And so I just, you know, they're now going to try to run the vice genocide heir, Kamala Harris, for governor of California. I mean, we can't let this happen. And so anything I can do to help Butch Ware, I'm all in, and I want to encourage people to donate to the campaign, and let's help a real working class party get elected and become a formidable force in American politics, because we need it. So thank you for having me.
Where can people find you if they don't already know where you are?
Well, that's a good question. I'm basically at Rathbone on most social medias, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter. I refuse to call it X. It's still Twitter to me. And Instagram. So yeah, just Rathbone on all those platforms. You could find me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hang out with us if you can.
Absolutely.
We'll bring the panel together for a discussion soon. And reminding everybody that this is a fundraiser. The links are being dropped in the chat. Please kick in. I want to acknowledge that our friend Jennifer Sullivan in Florida has said that there's a Florida Green who will donate $500 as a match if five $100 donations come in. So we will track that. We are tracking donations as they come in, and thank you so much for everybody. Feel free to post in the chat if you have donated. Let other people know that you're kicking into this. Thank you so much, Rathbone. We'll be back around to you. Next, I want to introduce somebody who was a supporter of the Stein Ware campaign in the last election cycle, and did a few live streams with us in support of Jill, because, you know, again, going back to the horrific genocide that we all experienced from across the ocean and are somewhat separated from, but Susan Abulhawa is so much more closely connected to it. This is friends and this is family. And I will tell you for myself, I can't imagine where my head would be if this was my people who were being mercilessly slaughtered like this, and not just in this last year and a half, but over decades and decades of oppression. So on that, you know, on that. I would love to introduce Palestinian American author and activist Susan Abulhawa. Susan, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. And Ramadan Kareem, Butch. It's not fair you look that good on day, what is it, day 5 or 6, 7? I don't know. I look like this.
Yeah. Ramadan Mubarak to you, Susan. I don't want to interrupt, but I definitely wanted to return the greeting. Yeah.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. It is it's really a pleasure to talk to people about you for the governor of California, because Professor Butch Ware is a candidate who's not interested in playing usual political games. He's not running, he's not showing up to pander to rich and powerful oligarchs. He's not fooled by the way that things work in California or anywhere in this country. I believe that Butch is running for governor, not to join the establishment, but to rebuild it, to break it down, this broken, corrupt system, and build it back in a way that works better for all of us. Because California, like the rest of this country, is run by a small, powerful, elite group of corporate giants, oligarchs, real estate moguls, and political insiders who wield their wealth and their influence to keep the system stacked in their favor, to siphon taxpayer dollars into their pockets and get laws on the books that work for them. And in the past, at least several decades, at least as long as I've been alive, they have slowly shaped every state to serve their interests, while the rest of us struggle more and more just to survive. So this system that is run by people who care nothing about the collective good. They care nothing about collective welfare. They care only about profits and hoarding more and more wealth and power. So one of the most striking examples of this we saw recently during the fires, when we all learned that the Resnicks, for example, one of the richest families in California, through their company, the so-called wonderful company, they took control of huge swaths of California's water, using their political influence, their money, to basically turn a public resource into a private commodity. And they diverted this resource away from communities that need it the most. And so while millions of people in California were fighting drought and then later fighting fires, this singular couple's monopoly on water ensured that they are the ones who profited off of a natural resource that belongs to everyone. And when I say everyone, I don't just mean humans, I also mean animals. Water was diverted from millions of individual lives for the benefit of one family. I mean, to me, that is a microcosm, really, of what's happening on not just a national level, but now more and more on a global level, driven by this rapacious capitalism. And I believe that this is the kind of corruption that Butch Ware is running to fight against. The system where people who already have so much still try to take more and more, while the vast majority of humanity is really struggling to meet basic needs. Another example in California that I'm aware of are the real estate developers all over California, with the help of corrupt politicians, have just in the past 20 years, I've watched working families get pushed out of neighborhoods, and these developers turning affordable housing into luxury condos and high-priced developments. And they did it in a way through this scheme that was actually subsidized by taxpayer dollars. It's mind-blowing. I mean, the diabolical schemes that they come up with to perpetually siphon money from the poor to the wealthiest citizens. And so while these entire communities were being displaced, these developers just lined their pockets and took advantage of zoning laws and taxpayer money just to secure profits. And I got to know Professor Ware well enough during the Jill Stein Butch Ware campaign to know that he isn't going to stand by while these developers tear apart communities to build their empires. And you know, these aren't just examples of bad policy. This is the system. This is the world we live in now, on a state level, on a national level, and increasingly on a global level, where we are all subordinated. All of our needs, our families, our protections, our speech, everything is subordinated to the whims of the people at the top who have so much power over all of us. And it's just this endless cycle of, it's perpetuated by this endless cycle of donations and backroom deals that keep politicians loyal and answering to donors and not the people who elect them. And so we need people like Butch, people who aren't going to play nice with the elites, people who don't respect them, who in fact, I hope, hold them in contempt, the contempt that they deserve. And I know that Butch has a long track record of speaking truth to power, not just during the last presidential campaign. I know he has a long track record of challenging systems of oppression and working with people. And I also know that Butch, as a historian, is keenly aware of the global interconnectedness of how police brutality in this country is connected to blood diamonds, is connected to oligarchical corporate extraction in Congo, is connected to turning pristine natural beauty into toxic waste dumps, and more importantly, is connected to genocide and settler colonialism in Palestine. And so this means that he understands that divesting from Israeli corporations is connected to protecting free speech, is connected to ensuring affordable housing, is connected to migrant rights, and so on. And so I'm really happy to now, you know, to go from the Stein Ware campaign to the Ware for governor campaign, and I'm happy to be with you all and answer any questions that you have. So, and I'm proud of you, Butch, for doing this. It's not, you know, it's not a pleasant experience to be running up against these people, and I'm glad we have people like you who are willing to do it.
Thanks, Susan. I'm not going to take over the MC role, but I'm going to acknowledge the good word. Thank you. And thank you for those excellent words.
Absolutely. Thanks. I was going to let you respond to that, Butch. Wonderful words of praise there. And listen, the word here is corruption. We're seeking justice, but we can't get to justice without eliminating the corruption. And the corruption in America is absolutely baked into the cake. With the two-party system, we have to work on the outside of it. We have to encourage those people who are inside of it and have not yet come to that realization that the work is to be done on the outside. We gotta encourage them. We gotta keep telling. Somebody had asked in the Q&A, what can we do? And the answer is keep telling the truth. Right? We know what the truth is. Just keep telling the truth. The truth will eventually sink in, and we will get there. It's not an easy road. Thank you so much, Susan. I appreciate you being here so much. Our next guest is someone else I have followed for the last couple of years, and I know he and Butch have an ongoing friendship. And one of the things that really speaks to me about Greg is I've been an activist for 35 years, and I actually got my start in anti-war activism. I was a sophomore at the University of Washington in 1990, and I was protesting the first Iraq War out there camping on the steps of the federal building in Seattle, and that's been my main mission for 35 years is anti-war activism. So everything that Greg says really speaks to me from that perspective. But anti-war veteran and activist and media personality, Greg Stoker, we are honored to have you with us. Please, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Sorry, I'm going to try to summon like some vim, verve, and energy because it's been an insane week in terms of news cycles. And I'm so sorry. I'm probably going to have to dip for the panel because Syria's kicking off again, and I work part-time for Mint Press News, and apparently it's like all hands on deck right now. So sorry about that, y'all. But in the meantime, there's a lot of stuff that Rathbone and Susan said that I'd like to respond to. But I guess if I was going to make a comment on this particular forum, it was from the State of the Union address, which lasted, an extra 40 minutes, started 5 minutes late, totally not giving like Mussolini vibes or whatever. But there was this one Democratic legislator, and she had this sign that says, "This isn't normal." And the cameraman caught it while Trump was still in the frame. And I was like, it's actually pretty normal if you look at this historically. It's pretty normal that an ineffectual, a liberal political opposition party will chase right-wing voters, and when the time comes, toe the line in order to maintain their own access to political privilege and power. And that's what we're kind of looking at right now. I just wanted to kind of anchor my little speech with, I don't know if you guys missed this. There was a article that Politico broke. They got their hands on a takeaway sheet from this very elitist think tank kind of strategy session at an elite resort on the Potomac River. It's from a think tank called Third Way. And everybody knows about the Heritage Foundation and Project 2025, which is a conservative think tank that crafts policy for the GOP, and which is now exclusively pretty much the party of Trump. But the DNC has their own institutions, and the problems with their own think tank institutions is that they're worthy of all the criticism that disaffected MAGA voters give the Democratic Party. They're out of touch. They're elites. They don't care about the working class. Actually, they have contempt for us. So it's kind of hard to find. If you guys haven't read it, you can just Google Third Way takeaway sheets Politico, and there's a hyperlink in the article to it because it's actually buried in Google. I had one of my buddies who's a data engineer check it out. So anyways, they came up with a lot of great ideas about how to come into contact with like the working class. And Democrats, they say, are perceived as intolerant of internal debate. Where questioned, progressive orthodoxy results in backlash rather than open discussion. Candidates and operatives need to feel more comfortable just saying no to activist groups and unpalatable far left ideas. They also say that the working class fears climate change regulations because it will destroy jobs. Get out of elite circles into real communities. E.g., these are direct quotes. Get out of elite circles into real communities. Example, tailgates, gun shows, local restaurants, and churches. So, of course, this is all like Republican coded language. And I go back to the strategy of the Democratic Party over the last 8 years. In 2016, Chuck Schumer, one of the major policy crafters within the party, got on C-SPAN, and this isn't a direct quote. I'm like missing 5 words, but he said, for every blue-collar Democrat voter we lose in Western PA, we will pick up 2-3 suburban college-educated moderate Republicans, and we can repeat that in Ohio and West Virginia. And he said that on the same campaign that Hillary Clinton, during one of her conventions, said, we can take it to the banks. We can, regulate them, and they deserve it. But would that end racism? Would that end sexism? So what we're seeing now is the Democratic Party doing what it does best, alienating working class voters and doubling down on losing strategies. And I think that's typified that they're not going to change, because what did Gavin Newsom do? And this is actually kind of why I jumped on this panel, because I was like, hey, Butch, I'm moving to California. I'd rather you be governor than anyone else. So I jumped on this panel for that. And Gavin Newsom just said Charlie Kirk. And he's like, what do you, it was like such a broadcast. Like he was really vibing with Charlie Kirk. And he's like, you know, even though Charlie Kirk's a notorious racist, homophobe, transphobe, xenophobe, basically all the phobes except fascist phobe, Christian nationalist phobe. And, you know, he was asking Charlie Kirk for advice. Like, what do we need to do to fix our messaging? And he probably read this position paper by the third way. And it was like, you know, you need to engage in tailgates and gun shows and churches. You know, that's where you're going to find your voters. You're going to try to be Republican light, same great taste, fewer calories, and fewer voters, actually, because they already have the Republican Party. So yeah, there needs to be a viable alternative, and whether it's the Green Party, which is the most viable alternative at this moment, or something else completely, the Democratic Party is not going to save you. And they say that they're here to stop fascism. Well, I don't know. I just wish I just watched them mobilize jackbooted thugs in New York subway systems because of, you know, 120-pound liberal arts majors with kefias on in the New York subway system, and I don't know, sponsor, cosign a genocide as well. And in this takeaway sheet, they also talk about, you know, avoid single issue voters, which is coded for like the pro-Palestine crowd or the Stop Cop City crowd, because all they care about is their one issue. And as Susan remarked, you know, I could basically walk you through the supply chain that goes from the Congo to the Israeli military industrial complex to the prison industrial complex here in the United States. So, I mean, is there a single issue? I kind of think it's all, you know, capitalism, imperialism, colonialism, genocide. That's the progression of these things, and they're all connected to the same thing. And, you know, all the drones that are being tested in Ukraine and in Palestine are coming to a police department near you. So anyways, yeah, I just wanted to get on and just say a couple things that the Democratic Party is not going to save us, only us will. And I don't know, if you needed more evidence that they're just not going to change, just look at the State of the Union. They're wearing pink. I believe the opposition party to the Nazis in the Reichstag wore purple hats. So that's fun. I forget what they were called, but that you can definitely look that up. And yeah, we just have to. Like, there's not really a choice, and we're going to catch a lot of heat from the Democratic support base, which we did over this last election. But we have to also remember that there are going to be a lot of disaffected MAGA voters. There's also a completely anti-authoritarian right that I generally engage with, because they're mostly veterans, like libertarians, and I have my own critique of them. They're like, tyranny.gov, no. Tyranny.com, tell me more. But there's also anti-authoritarian right constitutionalists that I talk to them like, hey, do you hate the Democrats? Do you like guns? What guns do you have? Also, let's talk about these other social issues as well. So, and I also have to remember, I grew up as among the transatlantic liberal elite before I ran off and joined the army. I grew up in New England boarding school, so I understand the corporatist mentality that the DNC has, and they're not going to change, because their one job is to preserve their own privilege and capital as much as they can. And if they have to fold into fascism, well, they're probably already doing it while decrying it actively as a system of governance. So, yeah, we got to do that. And so, scoop up if you're trying to do grassroots activism. I'm not an organizer. I communicate with people. So what I try and do is send out a message to like disaffected people on the right, and also liberals who are getting more radicalized, because that's where I started. Personally, you know, I was like, yay, Democratic Party, Obama. You know, when I came out of high school, and then, you know, I witnessed firsthand his drone strike policy when I was in special operations, and that kind of disillusioned me. with him. And so I don't know. I don't know. I would just invite people to, yes, continue to organize and protest, but also reach out to people that you don't politically agree with, because it takes a long time for someone to shift their political mentality. I was on the spear tip of U.S. imperialism when I was in Ranger Regiment, and I was never a Captain America guy, but I kind of bought the Kool-Aid, and it took me 10 years to get from there to where I am now. So this is a long-term marathon type thing, and that's just what I want to come in here and remind people of. I'm actually going on a lot of like libertarian and constitutionalist podcasts in the coming weeks, and my goal is to explain to them, no, there's actually a difference between liberals and the left. The reason Republican politicians describe us all as the left is because they want to basically discredit any movement that's not their own. So anyways, thanks y'all so much for having me. I'm sorry I couldn't stick around from the panel, but I really appreciate you guys, and thank you, Butch, as always, for being here.
Greg, that was amazing words of wisdom. And I think something that probably needs to be pointed out right now, as Greg says, the Democrats are not it, and rightfully so. I was part of the Bernie movement in 2016, and we won every county in the caucus for Bernie. And we got a bunch of people elected to the Washington Democrats State Committee in 2016. And when we got there, we realized that we had no executive power, and they were going to do everything they can to marginalize us. They want to put out a platform that they have no intent of supporting. So us as Bernie activists, we were very excited. Look, we got some power within the Democratic Party. Look at this wonderful platform that has all the wish list stuff that we want. And when it actually comes to implementing that, and holding Democratic politicians accountable to the platform that they supposedly say they support, the answer is always no. So that's what I learned spending 4 years on the state committee of the Washington State Democrats, and where I really said, okay, Bernie is not it. And I think that's an important part, as Bernie is out there, and a lot of is being made of the crowds that Bernie is drawing right now. We need to communicate to those people who still have enthusiasm for Bernie. Do not get sheepdog back into the Democratic Party. The real action and the real movement needs to be to the left of the Democratic Party. Bernie had his moment, and the Democratic Party knifed him in the back not once but twice. We should all take a lesson. We're not going to let it happen a third time. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on three. Fool me 3 times? Are you kidding me? Let's not go there. So appreciate your words very much. So before we move on to the second half, while Susan and Greg and Rathbone are here, if we can have a little bit of panel discussion and Butch join also. The question in the chat that I wanted to touch on is where is it here? Ralph Lambreglia, how close are we to a major leftist tax revolt? And I would like to expand that. Like, how close are we to getting where we need to be? What are your guys' thoughts on this? Because for those of us who have been in the activist space for decades, it is a long road. And we keep coming to these points where we feel like, here it is, we're gonna get over the hill, and then there's setbacks. I'm gonna leave that question open to whoever wants to jump in. Where are we in this movement right now?
I'll just sorry guys, I'll just cut in real quick before I bounce. Here's the thing: I always I have this idealistic spark in me that I'm always like, okay, wow, this massive expansion of consciousness around the Palestine issue. It exploded overnight. And, if you remember the Vietnam backlash, it took years to educate American populations about it. It started with like college teach-ins about the dynamics of the Vietnam War, and it was like a lot slower to spread. So at first I was like, oh yeah, this is going to change things. And I kind of got ahead of myself because I guess I underestimated the American capacity for complacency, for political complacency, because we're isolated from each other. It's been designed that way. There's been a lot of divisive politics for so many years and years. But I think as the material conditions of the United States continue to degrade, I think we need to be more aggressive with trying to talk about things like class, the elites, how there's not really that much of a distinction between Democrats and Republicans when you take away a number of issues. So I don't know. I think we're still a ways off. That's my personal take, but I think things are going to accelerate in the next coming years, especially if the anticipated recession happens. That will be a prime opportunity to preach the proverbial secular gospel about this kind of stuff. So, anyways, guys, thank y'all so much, and really glad to be here. Good to
Greg,
meet all of you.
before you go, where can people find you other than Mint Press?
I have my own podcast, Colonial Outcasts. We call it the Anti-Imperialist Podcast that your uncle will hate. And then I'm also on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter as well. Like Rathbone, I don't call it X because hard pass. So, all right. Well, y'all have a good weekend and a good night. And
Thanks, Greg.
keep it up. See you around.
Thanks so much, Greg. So, continued open question to Rathbone and Susan and Butch. Where are we in this movement right now?
That's a interesting question. I feel like there's a number of ways you can think about it, but I feel like if we have Donald Trump to thank for anything, it's accelerating the downfall of the American empire. I do believe we're in a late stage phase of empire. It's in decay, and when capitalism is in decay, it leads to fascism. Maybe I'm biased, but I have been thinking a lot about Russia 1917 and how you had this unelected snake oil salesman who had the ear of the czar and was guiding government policy, which was completely untethered to the reality of the material conditions of the peasantry and the working class. And those, that's sort of idealism had to crumble. There was a turning point where the materialists had to, take power back. And I don't know, I definitely see a corollary between Rasputin and Elon Musk and Trump and the czar, and just the complete, it's a circus, it's a complete circus. And I just think he's accelerating. I don't know, I can't put a time stamp on it of when it's gonna happen, but I do think that it's accelerating along those lines. And I don't know. The other thing I would say is that you never really know, because there's all these if we study history, we learn that there's always a bunch of quantitative changes that are happening that are sometimes aren't even noticed by or taken into account by the public or in the conscience, but it's all happening in the background. And then sooner or later that gives way to a qualitative shift. Many numerous and nearly imperceptible quantitative changes produce a qualitative shift over time. And who knows, exactly when that qualitative shift happens, but I think it's going to happen. I think we are in an unsustainable situation here. And I think I always go back to the simplicity of the problem is capitalism, and it's based on an irreconcilable contradiction, which will eventually give way to a political revolution, which I know is a dirty word, but there, I said it.
Thanks, Rathbone. Susan, thoughts on this?
I like the comparison between Alexandra Fedorovna's Rasputin and Elon Musk. I think there's a big difference between the United States and the Russian Empire. And also, before 1917, there were a couple of pretty significant revolts, most notably the Decembrist revolt in 1825 that preceded the Bolshevik Revolution by 90 plus years. So yes, I think we are on the cusp of America's decline, but that's not going to happen, I think, in the next few years. That's a very long, that's another generation, I think. But there's most certainly a shift there, a shift primarily away from the unipolarity order that we have been suffering under, where the United States really is the big dog on the planet. But the rise of China, coupled with the indignant defiance of Russia, as well as Iran, and is kind of shifting the poles of power. So you have that happening on the one hand, but on the other hand, and this is really a very, very significant thing recently, just that the genocide in Gaza has unmasked the United States and the West in general in a way that I think is that is the accelerationist spark, I would say, because in doing that, in unmasking the hypocrisy of the West, the sham of so-called international law, they they have revealed to the global majority, principally African nations, Asian nations, South American nations, and West Asian nations, that what they have felt in their gut all along, that international law was just a tool of empire, was a tool of control, is true. It wasn't just a feeling. It wasn't just a sense. No, this is real. Because now when they're faced with real crimes that they don't want to prosecute, nothing's happening. And so I think this, one of two things is going to happen. Either international law and international order that was created in the wake of World War II is going to collapse, or it's going to work. Either way, it's bad for the West. It's bad for Western order. If it works, then they're held accountable, and Netanyahu goes to The Hague and he's hanged, I hope. If it doesn't work, then that's even bad. That's probably worse. If it does collapse, it's way worse for the West, because they lose their mode of global control, and they lose the confidence of all the nations that they have been bullying and subordinating for decades. And what happens when you do that, when you take it down to schoolyard politics, right? What happens when all the kids who are getting bullied gang up and they organize, and they're like, you know what I mean? What do? They
That is
gang
what's
up
happening.
on the bully, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of countries who have a lot of beefs, who just want their moment to stick it to the West. So that may come to fruition. I don't know. In terms of like revolution in this country, I think this country, this population is unlike any other when it comes to that impulse for revolution, because you can have all of the conditions for revolution that would spark a revolution anywhere else in the world. You can have all those conditions in this country and nothing will happen. And we know this from history. So if you look in the 1920s, during the Great Depression, all the conditions for revolution were there, but there was no revolution. There were revolts, there were protests, there was organizing, there were there were movements, but not a revolution. And I've thought about this a lot over the years, and there's a lot of reasons, I think, for it. Number one is because this country is so heterogeneous, right? It's so easy to pit to exploit racial animosities and pit people against each other, to preclude organizing, and we see that happening in every moment. The people in power are very adept at exploiting this,
Mhm.
you know, foundation of America that is racist and hateful
Mhm.
and genocidal, right? And it's there. It's baked in the cake of this country, and the people in power know how to push those buttons, and they've largely been successful. And so I think our task as citizens who want to organize is to recognize that, to connect the dots and lose your fear. That's it. And I think I feel like I've taken up a lot of time, but thank you for listening.
Susan, amazing. That, and you're right. I think once people wake up, it's like that. Once you're awake, you can't go back to sleep. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that's where we've got to get people in the headspace of. And it's very hard to do against decades and decades of very carefully crafted propaganda. So the I want to kind of bring all back around to why this campaign here with Butch is so important, because Butch is absolutely an unapologetic truth teller on the issues of justice and liberation and where we need to go. And there is, if people want to ask about policy, well, what is your specific policy on this, that, or the other as it pertains to running the state of California? We have a ton of ideas of how things need to be different, but in order to get people to wake up to hearing that message, they also have to recognize that the message that they have been receiving from the propagandists and the duopoly is really it's snake oil, and it's been snake oil. So there's an element definitely of smashing the duopoly and also saying, but here's what we have in its place. Butch has said often that the child of Adam does not drop what's in their hand until they can reach for something that is better. And Butch, you can say that again. How do you phrase that?
Jason, you literally nailed it. I mean, like that was that is the exact, it's a Wolof expression. The child of Adam does not release what their hand is holding until they are reaching for something better. And that's where we have to have an aspirational politics and aspirational policies. And don't worry, yes, I'm gonna be truth telling and no punches pulled, but like we have a plan and it can actually be executed to deliver for the people if you pull back from all of this insane waste. So I'm gonna be quiet and make more room for Dr. Jill to get in, just because Jill and I talked on the phone not too long ago, but I haven't heard Jill speak in public in a little while, so I'm just eager to hear what Jill has to say. And Jill, if I turn my camera off for a minute, it's because I'm having some oatmeal with yogurt. I'm just you guys saw me breaking my fast with some dates and coffee and a little bit of water, but I'm still here and listening carefully. But I don't feel like the world needs to watch me chew, while you're talking. So Jason, I'll let you do the introduction, and I'm going to turn my camera off for just a quick moment. But I
Will
just want
do.
to give warm greetings to Dr. Jill, and my face will be back on screen in a moment.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thank you, Susan and Rathbone. And please hang out. It is my great honor to introduce somebody who I have considered over the last, year and a half that we've been, it's a little over a year now that we've been working together. Somebody who has become a great friend and a mentor, and, another unapologetic truth teller and fighter for justice. Butch's running mate for the 2024 campaign. My great pleasure to introduce Dr. Jill Stein. Jill, you've got the floor.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jason. Thank you, Butch. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Rathbone. Thank you to everyone who's here. It's such an honor to be here. It just gives me great joy to sit back and listen. And I feel like you have said it all. I'm gonna kind of give my take as someone who got their start fighting the Vietnam War, or fighting to stop the Vietnam War, in way back in high school, we were standing on a street corner in front of our public library before it was like a thing, because it just didn't make any sense to us. And like our previous speaker, Greg, was pointing out, it took a long time to change public opinion about the war in Vietnam, even while the draft was on, and thousands upon thousands upon thousands of Americans were coming back in body bags, and there was press coverage of the carnage in Vietnam, you know, before this era when the press had to embed and basically be censored by the U.S. military. So in spite of all those things, it took years, and it was such a sign, really, of what Susan has referred to about the genocide being kind of the nail in the coffin for U.S. imperialism. It just really, it's a big reveal about what this scam of full spectrum dominance is about, where it goes, the unsustainability, the horrific, absolutely intolerable injustice of it, how international law and human rights and the rights of children are, you know, absolutely being shredded, how murder on an industrial scale is being normalized with something, I think it's now up to 5 or 6 times the entire firepower of Hiroshima having been dropped, you know, in an area the size of Philadelphia. I mean, it's just staggering what's going on, and it is a big wake-up call to the minority of the world's population that wasn't aware of this. I think most of the world is. Martin Luther King called it like it is. My country, that is the US of A, is the biggest purveyor of violence in the world today. That was back in the 1960s. You know, and it's all the more violent now. It's violent, it's absolutely unsustainable. And as Martin Luther King also said, militarism, racism, and end stage capitalism, they all go together. You know, it's not like it's one, you can't fix one of these without really addressing them all. It's this great, gigantic cluster of injustice, in unsustainability, and, you know, and absolute terror. And from my perspective, having watched things ebb and flow over decades, in my perspective, kind of learning how to read behind the headlines and, you know, actually look at what's truly going on, it's very clear that the American people are not buying this now. You know, and the opposition to the genocide is one, you know, is one really powerful piece of evidence right there. Within the first month or so, it was 68% of Americans who wanted an immediate ceasefire and end to the genocide and the occupation. And a couple months later, it was over 60% that actually wanted a weapons embargo and a complete end to military support for Israel. So the problem, in my view, is not the American people who, even while voting for Trump, were passing progressive referendums for, you know, to increase school funding, for $17 or $20 minimum wage, you know, for well, polling showed support for healthcare as a human right for everyone, for a Green New Deal, for the right to a job. I mean, the public continually polls progressively. What's happened is that people have woken up to the scam of the Democratic Party. And starting in Obama's years, the Democrats lost 1,000 seats in state legislatures across the country. They lost 64 seats in Congress, they lost 12 seats in the Senate, and they lost 12 governorships. That's when the big dropout from the Democratic Party happened during the Obama years as a consequence of the Wall Street bailouts. Obama bailed out Wall Street to the tune of trillions while throwing some 8 or 9 million homeowners out of their homes. You know, that was a really powerful wake-up call to people who thought that the Democratic Party was for working people. It's absolutely not, you know, and that on top of NAFTA was really the, you know, that was the end game. for the Democrats. And so it wasn't hard for Trump to pretend that he was going to be the agent of change and he was going to be the guy supporting working people. I mean, I think it reflects the desperation of working people in this country that people bought into that. But they bought into it because they already rejected the Democrats for having been thrown under the bus for decades, and they were denied any other option. 1 out of 3, more than 1 out of 3 Democrats, not Democrats, I'm sorry, 1 out of 3, every 3 eligible voters chose not to vote for either of the parties of oligarchy being rammed down their throats. And what did the Democrats do to prevent people from knowing that there is an alternative that actually supports a true radical fighting progressive agenda? You know, healthcare and housing and education as human rights, downsizing the military and putting our dollars into true security here at home and abroad, and fighting the climate crisis and all that. You know, the Democrats did not want that to be known, because that's exactly what people are clamoring for. And polls show, you know, in a very powerful, convincing way, that this is what people want. And that's why the Democrats spent more than the entire budget of our campaign in order to smear and silence and basically cancel knowledge of our campaign. And what happened on the Breakfast Club is that was their greatest fear. On the Breakfast Club, when people didn't know that there is such a campaign that's fighting for justice and sustainability and peace, comment after comment, and there were 20,000 last I checked, basically said, wow, I didn't know there was a choice out there. I'm not only going to vote for these guys, that is for Butch and myself, I'm going out to register green. And that's when the Democrats really turned up the heat. They, you know, they created their war room in order to basically smear campaign and fear campaign against us. And for the first time, you know, we had the great distinction of having a major party run a major ad campaign against us. They were absolutely terrified. They have absolute reason to be terrified. You know, I see the revolution as kind of already in full swing. You know, it needs unleashing, but it's there, it's happening. And it's not as though, you know, a battle, an actual battle has to be fought. You know, what we have to do is win an election. We have to win an election, and to find how it is that you crack through this blanket of propaganda. As Alice Walker said, the biggest way people give up power is by not knowing we have it to start with. We have the power, you know, in the same way that Malcolm X said, we are not outnumbered, we're just out-organized. That is the question of the hour. And important to recognize that Trump's momentum has already broken. There's massive infighting within his campaign now. The fight that broke out in their cabinet meeting the other day between the Secretary of State and Elon Musk, you know, and the cabinet members are feeling like Elon Musk has basically stolen their authority, which he has. He has absolutely no authority. He's a complete usurper. He's a billionaire predator who somehow, you know, fought his way into the Oval Office. And he is effectively the president now in terms of actually running the show and calling the policies. And the American people are horrified. Even Republicans are largely horrified. MAGA is horrified. You know, so that Trump illusion has already been shattered. The economy is already on a fast downhill course, and consumer confidence has taken a huge nosedive. Unemployment has ticked up. The Federal Reserve of Atlanta actually is predicting the downturn, serious contraction in the economy. So it's already happening. I felt actually in my first campaign for governor, which was in the year 2002, my conclusion coming away from that was that the rebellion is in full swing. It's already happening. It's been happening for a long time. Our job is to unleash it. And I am so grateful that Butch has seen fit to step up to the plate. And, this was kind of the magic of his political persona, his political momentum from the very start was that he doesn't see this about him. He sees this as a thing he is called to do, as a thing he could not say no to, a thing that he turned his life around on a dime. He said he would think about it. And that when we cornered him, he had been, I think he was asked to interview me. We had a fabulous interview. It was like discovering a long lost, lifelong family member, a very good friend. We were just like shockingly in the same place about just about everything. It was astonishing. And we were trying to find a vice presidential candidate because the wonderful candidate that we had decided on had a family crisis and had to step back. So suddenly we had to have a candidate within a week, to talk to someone and get them to turn their life upside down and give up their next year, to make that happen in the course of a week is absolutely, that's not something that was going to happen. But we had this conversation that was just absolutely on fire. And the campaign had a huddle afterwards and said, oh my God, this is our candidate. And I think we called him up the next night and said, hey, did you ever think about running for vice president? And he said, well, I never did think about running for office ever, for any office, but now that you have put, the genocide and everything else in my hands, I'm going to really think about this and talk to my friends and advisors and family and speak to my spiritual, higher voices here. And let's talk tomorrow. And we talked tomorrow, and there it was. And, it was like kind of in a way that gives you goosebumps. It was like this was supposed to happen. And there's another backstory here, which I'll just mention quickly, was that we discovered that Butch's second mom, Annie Young, was my kind of a key political mentor for me when I was first starting to challenge power and getting serious and realizing you couldn't just be in the nonprofit world. You couldn't just, advocate. You couldn't just be a public advocate because it doesn't go anywhere until you challenge power. As Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. So unless you actually challenge power, forget the advocacy. The advocacy has only gone backwards in my lifetime as a social activist and an advocate and an organizer. I've only seen it go backwards, except where we stand up and actually assert power. And I realized, that's what we got to do. And Annie Young was that person who lived in Minneapolis, where Butch was growing up, basically, and was the first Green elected official in Minneapolis and one of our highest ranking elected officials in the whole country in the early 2000s when I was first getting active. And so I hung out with her a little bit when I went to Minneapolis a couple times and learned so much from her. And then it turned out that she, who was my political mentor, was Butch's effectively second mom, or like co-mom, you could say, along with his single parenting mom. And so that was like another just sort of mind-boggling thing that said, this is written, this is written in the books, whatever the books are, if there's a plan somewhere, this appears to be the plan. And we are all part of that plan because that plan depends on us. The rebellion is in full swing. It depends on us standing up and seizing the power that we have, as Alice Walker said. The biggest way we give up that power is by not knowing we have it. the biggest way we implement that power is by recognizing that we, in fact, are not only powerful, we're actually unstoppable if we, in fact, connect with the power of our numbers, the power of our shared vision. And it's not just lefties, it's really kind of basic American progressive vision. And it's out there, and it's our job to give people a place to rally around and to make this happen, to stop the genocide, to slash the war machine, to put these dollars, over 50% of our congressional discretionary budget, to put those dollars into true security here at home, supporting healthcare as a human right, and public housing that is social housing, and rent control, and so many things that are actually within reach right now. We don't need a miracle. We don't need rocket science. These are things the American public already supports, but is systematically denied by having the power of our vote denied us. Take a lesson from Mexico. Mexico made this happen. Mexico, they still have a lot of work to do, but they completely transformed their politics. Their small parties of the left got together starting in about 2014. And first they got together just as social movements collaborating. And then after a few years, they started running AMLO, Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, running him for higher office. And lo and behold, he won in the last election and served for 6 years as president. It was a total transformation of politics in Mexico. And, Mexico makes us look like a banana republic. By comparison, Mexico has campaign finance reform. They have public funding of their elections, and they have public airtime. So you cannot buy advertising in Mexico. It's distributed equally among everyone who achieves basically ballot access and is running. So there are real examples before us. Another example to cite, look at South Korea. South Korea, the president declared martial law in South Korea on December 3rd, something like that. Within 6 hours, the parliament had scaled the barred gates around parliament because the forces of martial law tried to shut down parliament so that it could not repeal the declaration of martial law. So word went out on social media, and there were 16,000 people within an hour that were gathered outside of the parliament as just after martial law was declared, and the gates were locked, and the people helped the parliamentarians. They came out. They didn't just wear pink jackets, and carry little signs. They scaled the walls with help. And the staff also scaled the walls. They got into the parliament. They blocked the windows and the doors so that the military forces could not force their way in. People turned out by the thousands to basically insert themselves into this scene and to try to talk the forces of martial law out of using their weapons. And they pretty much succeeded. I mean, it was an amazing story that's been suppressed in this country, but if you Google it, you can find it. I can post some links to it as well. It's amazing, and it really shows what an informed and mobilized electorate can do to demand democracy and to stand up and to fight back against the forces of fascism and martial law. It's absolutely astounding. So in my view, as someone who's been kind of fighting the system for way too long, it's absolutely remarkable how many resources we have that we could use if we can simply get the word out, if we can leverage the power of rebellion that is already in full swing. And we're here tonight, thanks to Butch Ware for giving us a a flag to rally around, because when we're able to get together and with a focus and to push this flagship campaign behind a candidate who knows how to organize, who knows how to inspire, who knows how to raise money, who knows how to pull together a team. We are all part of that team, and we can make this team work, and we can push through. California is a microcosm of the US and badly needs real representation for real working people. They will not get it from Kamala Harris. They do not have it from their current governor. On at least 2 occasions, they could have passed Medicare for all, and the Democratic majority stood up and blocked it. So California is as good as it gets under Democrats, and we have to stand up and show that we really can take our democracy into our own hands and demand a government that's actually working for working people. And there couldn't be a better place and a better time. And I really urge everyone to stand up and take this campaign seriously. Please contribute tonight. At your deepest level, make your contribution. We need to get staff going, many staff going right away, because it all is really about that ground game. At the end of the day, it's about that ground game. It's about that grassroots organizing. We need to be hiring organizers and getting them to work on the ground as quickly as possible, and volunteer and talk up a storm on social media. So thank you all so much. It's really such an honor to be a part of this, and I have the highest hopes for what we're going to do together. Thank you all so much.
Appreciate that so much, Jill. Thank you. And let me just quickly follow up on a couple of things that Jill said. First of all, I do want to let everybody know we've had an offer of a generous match of $1,000 if we can get 10 $100 contributions, of which we have 2 now. So if 8 more people can kick in $100, then we'll get that $1,000 match. And appreciate the person who is offering that. I don't know the name right now. The other thing is, I do want to talk about staffing a campaign. Right now, I want to give a shout out to some people. Butch's wife Clem is running the admin for the campaign. We have Cindy Colmenares, who is our treasurer. We've got Wendy Keslick, who is our volunteer coordinator. Please sign up to volunteer. I will put you in touch with Wendy. We are building local and regional teams. We want everybody on board. I want to thank Elena Costa, who not only did the graphics for the Stein campaign, but is now working with us with the graphics for the Ware campaign, and the wonderful logo that you see with Butch's face superimposed over California, which is just absolutely brilliant. That is Elena's brainchild, and she's going to do some more great work for us, including that we are going to get printables and downloadables up on the website, hopefully within the next 2 weeks. We are working on what we want the language and the visuals for that to be, but that is coming. I don't want to leave people out now that I've started saying names. So Arwa, who is basically our IT guru, Arwa Mubarak does just a fantastic work for us on the tech side of things. Who am I forgetting, Butch? I'm going to get myself in trouble every time I start naming names. I end up leaving somebody out, so I'm going to forget. So help me out here.
You're doing really well. You plucked off the core team, very solid, and then we've got a bunch of people that have volunteered.
Juwaria Abbas, who is our press secretary and social media manager. Also, I'm sorry, Juwaria. I knew I was going to forget somebody. If I've left anybody off in the moment here, our staff, what a dedicated team. Nora, who is our events organizer in the state of California. Sadaf, who I believe was in the chat here. Sadaf Aga in Irvine, who is going to help us us set up events in Southern California. All of these people coming together to really give their time to the campaign. And we are a campaign that supports labor and supports people getting a fair wage. And so we don't want people to be working for free, not for a campaign that in the end, we need to raise, millions of dollars to run this race effectively, to get our message out in the largest state in the union, not by size, but by population, by a long shot. And so it does take money if we are going to run this, race effectively. And I just can't think of anybody better to get behind as a candidate for governor of California. I will tell you right now that there are 36, 37 people filed for that seat right now. Kamala Harris is one of them. Majority of them are Democrats and Republicans. There are very few people outside the duopoly, but we will let the duopoly bang it out and cut each other down, and we'll just flank them on the left and win this thing. And California is a top 2 primary state. So what that means is the primary is June 2nd of 2026. When everybody goes to vote in the primary, if we get the second spot, that means we move on to the general. And can you imagine what the last few months of the campaign would be, the last 5 months going down to November, if the 2 candidates are Butch Ware and Kamala Harris? It is, it's going to be good times. We will get the debate. And that's another thing that I want to say is one of the real important things that we have to do here and get people on board quickly is you get into the debates by polling numbers. So the bigger presence that we can have out in every community, as the pollsters are calling around to figure out where people's allegiances are, the higher we poll, the more chance we have to get on the debate stage leading up to the primary, which is going to be really, really important, because if Butch is in a debate. I mean, just imagine the Trump-Harris debate back in, October or September or whenever it was. And that I remember we were all in, where were we? We were in New York. I think we were in New York. We were in a hotel room in New York watching the debate. And Butch is just sitting there going, man, all I need is to get onto that debate stage and it would be over. It would just be over. So, that's where we are right now. There's so much work to be done, and it does take money. So I saw another $100 donation come in. Please remember, we've got $1,000 match. We need $100 contributions. I will announce it as soon as we get there. But right now, I want to turn it over to Butch. If we want to continue the conversation with Jill and Susan and Rathbone, I'm going to step out of it, and Butch, I'm going to let you lead this for a little bit. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you being here.
So I'm going to say just a few words. First of all, words of thanks. It is humbling, to hear such generous, words of praise from Susan and from Rathbone, from Greg, from Dr. Jill. I don't take it lightly. I broke my fast. I muted my camera for a minute so I could say my sunset prayer. And I, said a word of thanks also for the support that we've received already up to this point. And I want to open in that spirit of gratitude before I get to the hard call that is really actually in front of us. So the first part, I've told my story many times, but some people are still hearing it for the first time. I was introduced into my own personal faith tradition of Islam and also into the Black radical resistance tradition when I read the autobiography of Malcolm X. I read it to cover in one night when I was 15 years old. I went out and checked out an English translation of the Quran from my school library the next night, and I read the next day, and I read it cover to cover the next night. And I had converted to Islam by the end of the week. And my faith is a huge reason why I accepted this invitation. I do think things are written. I do think that there is a world beyond this one where our actions are inscribed and that what we do in this place for good or for ill, is tethered to our souls. And we have, therefore, a tremendous opportunity in this moment when humanity is literally cast into so many darknesses, to actually like write a beautiful word and write, if you don't believe in a world past this one, you definitely believe in the tablet of history. If you're not trying to write your name on an eternal tablet, then write it on the tablet of history as one who stood up for justice and who took part in the resistance. And that's why I couldn't turn down Jill's offer when she made the offer. I was fearful of how I would be judged if I refused any opportunity to stand up against the deep corruption and genocide and exploitation and manifest cruelty that has become routine in our political system. The good news, the glad tiding, and it doesn't just come from the Quran, but it's actually a truth that is shared across all of our faiths and philosophies, sacred and secular. And this is something that we all share, no matter what our background is. In all of our traditions, there's a truth that connects them all. They all tell us that all empires fall, that nothing which is seized by force is ever held. So the glad tiding is that this corruption and imperialism and domination will end. It will. I take Susan's read, I take Rathbone's read, about what it's going to take for this next revolution. And I would add to it just simply that we have lived under now 5 centuries of white supremacist empire. Spain, Portugal, the Dutch Empire, France, then the British Empire, and since World War II, the United States of America. 5 centuries is enough. It's over. It's finished. What Gaza has revealed is that Israel's extinction burst, its genocidal fervor in its moments of inevitable doom, is also the extinction burst of American empire. And what American empire is, and Jill, that's how you got me onto the campaign. You said 2 things. You said cash reparations and dismantling the American empire. And I was like, okay, good. Sisters down the ride. Let's go. Like, that was my response. Let's go. And the thing is that we have this within our capacity now to accelerate the end of that. But the question is, what will happen to the Republic? What will happen to us in this place when that inevitable imperial collapse comes? So we have the opportunity still, and the moment is fleeting and it is brief, to actually take the vast resources of this state and actually make them serve the people. And the state of California specifically, if the United States were broken into 50 independent nations, the economy of the state of California would be the 5th largest economy in the world. It doubles the size of the economy of the next state in the union on that list, which is Texas. So understand that whatever happens in this state of California is going to have massive ripple effects. If we get single-payer healthcare in the state of California, single-payer healthcare is coming to every state in the union. How do I know? Because how did single-payer healthcare come to Canada? Passed in one province and then spread throughout the entirety of the union. If California adopts universal health care for everyone, it changes the environment for all. So that's part of the reason why the call here with people that are connected across this map is to contribute to this campaign, volunteer to this campaign, because we are the tip of the spear here in California. We are not waiting till 2028. And we are going to build the infrastructure, and we are going to build the ground game, and we are going to build the communal solidarity in this space. And we are going to not talk about how we make manifest this political revolution. We are going to build it from the bottom up. We are going to build it from the ground up. And that means that once you tag me into the fight, Jill, you know I wasn't going to take my foot off of the gas. In for a penny, in for a pound. And no, I would not have chosen this. If you had given me 100 lifetimes, I would not have chosen to run for elected office. But as somebody who has faith and believes in signs, I believe that being called into do this was not just an invitation, but it was a mandate. It was a requirement. It was a thing that I could not turn down. Because how, when we're given an opportunity, a weapon to fight against injustice, do we refuse to take it up? And everybody that is in this virtual room is being given that same offer, that same invitation. You are being invited into a struggle against injustice. You are being invited into a struggle for your fellow human being, to keep immigrants from being terrorized by a fascist state, to keep laborers from being exploited by a ruthless capitalist class that will literally wring every last drop out of your lives. They want America to become you going from company-owned housing to the company shop, to go shop in the company store, and then back on to the company-owned housing. They want to own you, body and soul, and extract all the resources from you. And we cannot allow this to happen. We have to fight back. And that means organizing. As Malcolm said, we are not outnumbered, we are out-organized. When I came to California, I became immediately enamored with this place. 6 years ago, I fell in love with it. And I knew that if I get the choice, this is where I want to stay for the rest of my life. It just felt like home. It felt like it had always been my home. And part of the reason why I was so attracted to this place was the legacy of the Panthers. In my Revolutionary Book Club, we read Revolutionary Suicide by Huey P. Newton in our last meeting. And most of my community organizing work since I've been here has been in Oakland, and then also in LA, and then in San Diego. And we are bringing back that organizing spirit of the Panthers. We are going to do this from the bottom up, from the ground up. And that means not just political organizing, but movement leadership. Yes, thanks to everybody that donated. But when you look at our website, you can also click on that mutual aid and direct action button, because we are about building a movement, not just a political party. And the reason is that political parties are meant to serve liberation movements. Political party organizing is at the heart of every successful modern revolution. What was Castro doing? Organizing, right? This is always at the core. This is how revolutions are built. And that's the reason why they came for Fred Hampton. It's the reason why they came for Huey P. Newton. It's the reason why they came for the Panthers, because they know how fragile they are in the face of organized resistance. And what we have had up to this point, and just pausing for a moment to say that Huey P. Newton in that book, Revolutionary Suicide, said that we are animated with the spirit of Malcolm. He said, we do not say that we are doing what Malcolm would have done, but Malcolm's spirit is with us. that same revolutionary call animated these movements, and it's a spiritual call. It's a call to stand up and fight. Because as Greg put it, the Democrats are not going to come to save you. I made 2 predictions on the campaign, and only 2. The 2 predictions were that the Democrats have no way of winning the election in November. And I knew that from the polling data in the Muslim community. I knew the Muslim community had tapped out on the Democrats as early as January of 2024, and therefore they had no way of winning those swing states. So I saw that prediction come true during the campaign. The second prediction that I made is that the Democratic Party is going the way of the Whigs. That was a party that used to exist and does not exist anymore. And that just as their inability to stand against genocide through enslavement meant the death of that party, so too has the Democrats' refusal to stand against genocide as the tool of empire sounded the death knell for the Democrats. And it has revealed a deep rot at the heart of that party. And we, as progressives, as radicals, as revolutionaries, and even as just ordinary Americans, are going to be there to pick up the pieces and form an actual resistance party. And that starts in the state of California. It starts with an understanding that there were probably 15 million voters out there that would normally have voted Democrat that could not hold their nose and sign on for genocide. And that those people are coming to us if we build, if we organize. It also comes with an understanding that there are probably a similar number that did hold their nose and vote for Trump because they don't see a difference between blue criminals and red criminals, and all other things being equal, they're rooting for lower taxes. But if you gave them an option that wasn't tethered to white supremacy, they would take it. All of the issues that we are running on in the state of California are issues that are 70-30 or 80-20 with the population of this state, which claims to be the most progressive in this union. And we are going to make them prove it because we are going to run a disciplined campaign that reaches into communities, builds the ground game from the bottom up. And Lord have mercy, what is going to happen to poor Kamala if they ever let her on stage with me? That is not a debate that she is going to walk away from. So what that literally means is that we have 15 months to June 2nd of 2026 to finish in the top 2 of that primary. And that means it is all hands on deck. It means that we have to have, as the Green Party and as the consolidated left, as the ordinary people who are fed up, and just don't make this just a leftist thing either. Please don't. Because 70% of American independents say that both parties are so bad at their job that we need a third party. 53% of registered Democrats say that both parties are so bad at their job that we need a third party. 48% of Republicans say that both parties are so bad at their job that we need a third party. Everybody knows that we need this option to stand up to the corporate crowd. Everybody knows it. So let go of the ideological purity test. I don't care if you're a Muslim, an anarchist, a communist, a socialist. If you are for the people and against the corporations, you're on this team. You're on this team because this team is standing for your right to have representation in your governance rather than have your government owned by corporations. So that means we need to, as has been said a couple of times tonight, we need to take this message out and stop just preaching to the choir. The people that are already in this room have heard this message, but we need to be communicating this message to any and everyone that will hear it. And we need to get serious about running to win. That there is a culture in this collective left that is about being happy to be on the field. Not if I'm running. We are running to win. We're not we're not out here to play games with these people. And that means that we have to have discipline in the way that we structure our campaign. We've got an incredible campaign team, and we are going to build field teams that go out and get the work done to win. It also means we have to fundraise. And I know that a lot of leftists make a virtue out of poverty, but the aim is to eliminate poverty, not to celebrate it. That means that we have to get serious about raising funds. In the Islamic tradition, there's a saying of the Prophet's cousin Ali, may Allah be well pleased with him. He said that if poverty was a man, I would have slain him. The goal is to end the thing. And that means that we have to pool our resources and get serious. The good news is we only have to do it once. As Dr. Jill mentioned, you now have public funding for elections. You have equal access to airtime in a place like Mexico. You have similar structures throughout Europe. The American people do not want elections to be sold off to the highest bidder. But unless and until somebody breaks through the duopoly that has campaign finance reform and public funding of elections as a core principle of what they're doing, they're going to continue to have that. So we have to fundraise like all hell, one good time. Because I'm telling you, if we win the state of California, the duopoly is broken. If we win the state of California, the duopoly is broken. They will not recover from that. They can't recover from that. So they're going to throw everything at us, but we need to fundraise seriously. And we need to also make room and welcome the new wave of people that have been inspired and lit ablaze in the interior of their beings by the struggle against police brutality and police violence, by the struggle against genocide, by the struggle for the dignity of immigrant communities. And my own wife, her mother, my mother-in-law did not see her brother for 23 years. My wife's Mexican-American, first generation, didn't see her brother for 23 years because after she came here, she couldn't go back to Mexico, lest she risk not being able to come back and be with her kids. So we are talking about struggles for basic human dignity, families being broken apart in this modern era, the same way that they were broken apart in the era of enslavement for my ancestors. This is a moral imperative, and we have an opportunity to stand up together, no longer mobilizing in silos around issues, but organizing for political power that will allow us to fight back against the people that make us suffer through their corruption. I'm going to give a couple of policy pieces, and then I'm going to call this thing a wrap. I've already talked about single-payer healthcare. We are running to bring universal health care to the state of California. What you may not know is that the Democrats passed it when Schwarzenegger was the governor because they knew he would veto it. And then in classic fashion, as soon as they had power, they couldn't pass it anymore. Weird how that happens. It's almost like they're controlled opposition and they're just trying to pretend like they're doing something progressive, but really what they're doing is laying down for the corporations and doing a kind of performance of resistance. The point of that is to say that the people of California have already come out in support of this. We can and will get it passed if you help me take that governor's mansion. Protecting immigrants' rights and immigrant communities. Gavin Newsom, AB 15, this bill that was put forth to prohibit coordination between the California Department of Corrections and ICE. Gavin Newsom said that if it reaches his desk, he'll veto it. ICE, come on in. I'm going to hand you over information about California residents. I'm going to hand over California residents to you. With me as governor of the state of California, no unconstitutional mandate will ever be respected. The feds are going to have to go through me and the full force of the state of California to touch a single California resident with an unconstitutional demand. That's what actual resistance looks like, not this fake token resistance that is about pretending like you're going to put up a fight, but ultimately kowtowing to the private prison industry. Free tuition, higher education. We used to have it in the state of California. Easiest thing in the world to bring back. These are all 80-20 issues for the people of California. Renewable, sustainable energy, tax the polluters, make the polluters pay for the consequences of environmental degradation. They should be on the hook for these fires. It's not just about, it is about reclaiming water from the resniks, but it's also about polluters pay as a simple, basic principle of environmental justice movements across the globe. Clean, green public transportation. Now they pitched this, but what has the rail line been in characteristic fashion in the state of California? It has been a handout by Democrats to their cronies that never actually ends in the completion of the project that they signed up for, because it is essentially a mafia organization where the state hands out favors to its buddies. That's what the Democratic Party in the state of California has become. We can demand better. And I'm going to end on these last two. We've already talked about land back. We've already talked about reparations. You know I'm running on both of those, but I'm looking at Susan's face on the screen. We're running also on state divestment from genocide. We have whole counties. Alameda County has divested and divested all business from anything that touches Israel. We have Israel. So the Zionist entity that shall not be named. We have municipalities, we have university campuses that have divested. This is an extremely popular movement in the state of California. By doing these things, laying out these policy platforms, controlling the real estate developers, making affordable housing available to the people, offering state-run grocery stores in every county so that you can bring food right from the farm to the table and get rid of the food deserts that are so prevalent in urban and rural areas alike. And because it's state-run and a worker cooperative and run at cost, the costs are going to be lower. You're going to be able to keep grocery prices down. These are all simple, practical solutions that can be implemented. California has this reputation for being progressive. Let's put them to the test. And I believe, to end here, that we can win if we actually make this a movement that doesn't just have policies that are good for working people, but that builds relationships with working people and working communities. That if we are not just a party and a movement that has the best policies for Black liberation, but is doing the work on the ground and showing up in communities and building that solidarity, not just the party and the movement that has the best policies for immigrants' rights and for the Latin community specifically, but actually doing the work of building relationships. That's why we need you to volunteer, because that takes people. That's why we need you to donate, because that takes resources. I am not playing with these people. We are in this fight to win. And the reason that we're in this fight to win is that if we leave this to teams blue and red, they will destroy our natural environment. They will launch another endless war that will continue to impoverish us. We have an opportunity in 2026 to hit them and to lay the groundwork for massive electoral damage in 2028 and 2032. This is a long game, and we need your support now. Kick into the kitty.
Thank you, Butch. You heard it. I mean, the vision is clear. We've got 15 months or so until the primary, and in California, the primary is the election. Right.
Yep.
That's what people need to know. This election is not happening in November for us. It's happening in June, on June 2nd. So we've got 15 more months to make this work. And I want to thank everybody who has donated right now. A little while back, half an hour ago almost, we were saying, 10 donations of $100 to match 1,000. Well, that came in when we made that. We were those 8 donations rolled right on in. And I want to thank David also, who is not in the chat, but must be out there watching on YouTube or Twitter or wherever it might be, donated $400. David, that's amazing. Thank you so much. We're going to do one last pitch here. Jill has said she will donate $250 if we can get 5 $50 donations to come in the next 10, 15 minutes. Jill's going to match that 250. But as Butch said, whatever is within you to give, give till it hurts, but not too much. I mean, you know how that goes. But the movement, unfortunately, is built on money right now. The Democrats and the Republicans, they have endlessly deep pockets. And we don't need to match their money, but we can't get outspent 1,000 to 1, right? We can get outspent 20 to 1 and still win, but we can't get outspent 1,000 to 1. And so the money is important. We've got our wonderful staff who are working around the clock for us. We want to make sure that they get paychecks, as well as the printed materials, as well as all the things that keep the lights on it campaign, paying polling organizations to get out there and see what where people's feelings are on the issues. And Butch had touched on the California wildfires, and I do want to bring light to something that we're going to message on in this upcoming week. And please sign up. If you volunteer for the campaign, you'll get put on our email list, and we've got wonderful copywriters who take our message and craft it into really hard hitting. The same people who worked for Jill's campaign. If you kind of notice the same tone and direction, these are people who really know how to land the punch where they need to land. And I do want to acknowledge upcoming. We've got these lithium battery fires that are going on in Moss Landing, which is roughly halfway between Santa Cruz and Monterey. We are looking at another situation like East Palestine, Ohio, where that train derailed and the chemicals spilled, and there was never any justice for the people. Still has not been justice for the people in East Palestine. No financial. I mean, the corporations tried to walk away from this, writing a $25 million check, which is a drop in the bucket to what is going to need to be restore these people to justice. And it is the same thing for people in Moss Landing. There's a lot of agriculture in that region. We don't know how much of the poison from these battery fires is not only going to the air that people will read, but are getting to the soil and getting to the water. This is the kind of thing that we need to, as a movement, be paying attention to. It's not just labor justice. It's not just immigration justice. I mean, we're talking about environmental justice and holding corporations accountable for the damage that they do. And it's happening right now in California. So Susan just left us. Thank you so much. I wish I'd had a chance to say goodbye to Susan. But Rathbone, for your time and your comradeship, thank you so much. Jill, any last words from Rathbone or Jill before we wrap this up? And thank you so much to everybody in the audience, everybody watching, everybody who's donated. $5 $50 donations, and we get a $250 match. Rathbone, final word?
I can't possibly follow Butch Ware or Jill Stein or you, Jason. I thought everything was very well said, and I'm just happy to be invited on this stream. And yeah, let's get Butch Ware for governor. I can't wait. I'm excited.
So much. Jill, final word?
Yeah, I mean, this has been really wonderful, and we need this. This is the future. This is political inspiration. This is therapy. People are walking around so broken right now, feeling so victimized by this predatory political system and the media that gins it up. And it's so fake, and it's not what's happening. It's not where the power is. And this is, we are in the abyss of history right now. The nuclear clock, the doomsday clock, is 90 seconds from midnight. It's closer than it's ever been. The climate is absolutely burning up before our eyes. Genocide is happening again. It barely paused in Gaza, and Israel is on the warpath right now. The greater Israel is basically still at war in the West Bank, Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, and Yemen is kicking back in. So the Middle East, and Russia and Iran have formed an alliance. So the mushroom cloud is hovering right now over the Middle East. We don't have time to beat around the bush. We don't have time to be sheepdogged back into the Democratic Party, where Hakeem Jeffries, is telling us it's their government. He's wrong. It's our government. It's our government. It belongs to we the people. And this is how we stand up and fight back in a absolute breakthrough campaign with an absolute breakthrough candidate. And I urge people, please, let's make it happen. If you have $50, if there are, I don't know, 4 people out there who can throw in $50, you got a match for another $250. Let's just give this another kick that it needs right now. We need to get another organizer on the ground, up and running. This isn't rocket science. This is about just deciding it's now or never. You know, our lives are on the line. Our lives depend on this campaign. So we couldn't have a better candidate to bring us together and to celebrate and transform the world with. Butch is a transformer. He's transformed his own life. He transforms the lives of his students. You know, he's the one who can help us transform politics, starting in California and then on from there. So let's make it happen. If you can throw $50 into the hat now, you know, it's another big push forward for us all. So thank you all so very much. Thank you, Jason. You know, thanks for ushering us through this evening. Thank you, Rathbone. Thank you, Butch. And thanks to everybody out there. Let's do it.
Thanks, Joe.
Wrap, everybody.
So it looks like we're down to the last two $50 donations. It's getting late, especially for folks on the East Coast. So I'm gonna make those two myself, so that we can get the match, Joe. So I'm kicking. I'll hit the donate button right now, and put in 100, so that we can get the matching. And it's good for us to go out working as a 1-2 punch, because that 1-2 punch is how this all got started. And I just wanted to take the last word to say, you know, thank you, you know, for thank you for making my life miserable. It's a tremendous, you know, curse and opportunity that you've given, you know, and and I mean it in all sincerity. You know, the opportunity to follow in the footsteps and fulfill the aspirations of my lifelong heroes is something that I hadn't predicted for myself. And you helped to facilitate and made that happen. So I like to think, you know, that Malcolm, you know, is with us, you know, pushing us on, you know, that just as Huey said, you know, we don't claim that we are doing what the Panthers would have done, but the spirit of the Panthers is with us, right? It's the same. So this is the next stage in a revolution, and I do believe that we can bring it to fruition. So I wanted to thank you for opening the door for that. And yeah, outstanding gathering. I'm just going to end it with a very, very simple prayer. May God Most High bring immediate alleviation to all of the suffering people across the globe, and to specifically lift the yoke of oppression from our brothers and sisters in Palestine and in Sudan and in Congo and every other place where, especially where our funds are harming them. And may God put into our hearts a spirit of resistance that will allow us to rise up in victory in defense of our common humanity, and to make us a shield against harm for all of those that are oppressed, especially in our communities here closest to home, but that through doing that, we become instruments of liberation and healing for humanity as a whole. Say Amen. Thanks, guys. Really wonderful gathering.
Thank you.
Can't wait to do it again. And for those the Minnesota people on the Zoom, yeah, I got a 5 o'clock flight. I will see you guys in Minnesota tomorrow night for an in-person one of these. And again, if you don't have to be in California, you know, we're trying to organize and fundraise across the nation. So if you want me to come to come out and address your community, just reach out to Jason, or email the campaign contact at butchwareforgov.org. Really appreciate everybody that donated and everybody that contributed. Take care all.